The first Descendant has a broad range of characters, and it is quite the tough decision on which to main, play, and even upgrade to or unlock. So I'm going to cover all of their details, including their abilities, their playstyles, lore, and how they work. I'm also going to include the new characters that just got announced and showcased. I'll deep dive as much as possible into each character, as well as using as much trailer and my own footage as possible. Additionally, I'll even include some of the experience that I've had with several of these characters, as well as a whole bunch more. What's up, world? It's Utopia back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things the first Descendant. Okay, so let's just jump right into it, get into all the characters. We'll start off with the ones that I know the most, or at least that are showcased in the trailer a ton, and that also have a ton of footage backing them, as well as what's been in several of the betas and playtests. So first up, let's start up with the fan favorite, Bunny. We'll start off here with her lore and the surrounding overview of her abilities. So first up, Bunny was an orphan who became notorious as a troublemaker to support her grandmother. She discovers her latent powers during a near catastrophe, and ultimately agrees to serve as a descendant to secure their future and seek the answers about her parent. The biocell suit helps Bunny convert and store electromagnetic force generated by her movements into electricity for combat, though it quickly loses charges if she remains still. Albion's technology couldn't perfect this device due to the unique nature of Bunny's energy. Moving on to her role, she is considered a nuker, and as stated previously, she is a dealer of continuous damage who sprints while discharging electricity. Her passive skill charges electricity when moving and inflicts damage to nearby enemies when landing after a double jump. She has 4 active skills here. The first one being Thrill Bomb, which summons an electro orb to attack nearby enemies and inflict them with electrocute effect. She also has Light Speeding, which sprint increases significantly and requires more electricity. Her Lightning Emission deals damage to nearby enemies and inflicts them with the electrocute effect also. Last up here, her maximum power shoots out electricity forward to inflict damage, and damage increases in proportion to the skill's duration. Again, this is a very strong class. You're mostly going to be doing a lot of movement and not a lot of gunfight or gunfire, as this class is mainly based on, again, moving around enemies, kind of exploiting that area there, as well as doing really good AoE damage overall. She is a very fast farmer due to her movement and being able to do AoE damage as she's moving around. And again, this is somebody that mostly you won't be using your gun with or a lot of gunfire. You're just going to be trying to get as much electricity and constantly staying moving. She was super strong in the 2023 beta. I'm not sure if she got nerfed since then. There has been some tech tests and some other betas there. However, she is really strong for AoE farming and farming efficiency. So if this is somebody that you don't mind being in melee range with and constantly moving, she is definitely for you. Next up, we do have Ajax. His backstory is he left active duty to become a professor, but quickly regretted it when he received a distress call from his former comrade, Aisha. He donned an experimental void energy battlesuit and set out to rescue her, only to be trapped in the void for 10 years. Upon his return, despite being offered a chance to resume teaching, Ajax chose to rejoin the Descendant Corps, feeling his mission to protect his teammates was unfinished. His Rally Mk5 Void Energy battlesuit, named after the first Descendant, was designed for void exploration. Though outdated and defective, it allowed Ajax to manipulate void energy using his spatial theories and arch. It now serves as a shield, providing powerful barriers and channeling kinetic energy. Jumping over to his passive skills and abilities, his passive skill acquires void energy after using skills. When the void energy reaches its maximum amount, it enhances skills and grants additional effects. His first active skill here is an orbit barrier. It creates a shield in front of Ajax, and its durability increases proportionally to Ajax's HP and defense. Next up, he does have something called a Void Walk, which is a tech ability that leaps into the air and lands on the ground to strike nearby enemies, stunning them. His second to last skill is an Expulsion, which strikes nearby enemies, knocking them back. Hypercube is his last ability here. It creates a dome-shaped shield, and its durability again increases proportionally to Ajax's HP and defense. His role is considered a tank, so if you're looking for that type of playstyle, again reminiscent of a tank, Ajax is definitely suited for this here. He's going to provide a lot of defense and a lot of cover for your teammates, so he will be a massive support in that department. Next up, we do have Valby. Her role is a constant DPS. She was part of the Ingress Environmental Watch and discovered something called the Last Emerald Lake and vowed to protect it. She was attacked by the Order of Truth and she awakened her arch, transforming into a powerful water entity to defend the lake. Her arch abilities allow her to become water, but she risks evaporation. Her environmental shielding suit helps maintain her human form and uses shape memory technology for tactical flexibility. Now first up, for her passive skill, she has something called Water Intake. When using a skill while standing on water, she consumes less mana, stamina. For her active skills, the first one here being Bubble Bullet. She bounces a Bubble Bullet forward to create a small puddle where the Bubble Bullet will impact and where she stands. Enemies in the small puddle take continuous damage and are inflicted with Laundry, so again some nice AoE damage and AoE output from her. Her next ability here is called Plop Plop. Creates a large puddle where she is standing. She then dives into it, then she'll pop out at a selective location in the large puddle. Enemies also in that large puddle will take continuous damage and again are inflicted with Laundry. Now she also does have an active skill here that is called Laundry, where she does become liquefied, and while liquefied she cannot take her feet off the ground or use skills, but she can move through enemies and her movement speed and defense do increase. When moving while liquefied, she creates a path of water that deals continuous damage to enemies and inflicts Laundry. Again, the Laundry skill there and that debuff are different. She does have a lot of defense here, a lot of AoE stuff. Again, this is going to be another character that is not going to be using gunfire or gunfights as much and more so focused on her abilities. She has another one here called Laundry Bomb, which changes the equipped weapon to a Laundry Bomb launcher. When the launcher is fired, a Laundry Bomb is created, pulling enemies in and inflicting them with Laundry, and also deals continuous damage. Again, all of her traits and abilities are centered around dots and also seem to be very AoE heavy, so she does seem like a decent AoE farmer and less so on single target, but she does have some really good defensive for a single target, so we'll have to see how she does play. Next up, we do have Viessa, who has been basically showcased for this entirety or the leading up to this game. She is one of the main characters, just like Ajax. Viessa is linked to the Arch Refrigerant release drones. She tracks and attacks enemies targeted by her. She was developed to enhance her battle capabilities, which uses thermal sensors and summons automatically when she uses her abilities. The technology led to linking other Descendant arches to drones and turrets. She humorously claims that she pioneered the Arch drone technology. She's also considered a smuggler who sourced luxury items from a city frozen by the Colossus' dead bride. Her presence awakened the dormant Colossus, leading to a fight she barely won with the Descendant Corp's help. Instead of prison, she was tested and found to be a Descendant, opting to join the Corps as she saw it as better alternative to imprisonment. Now her role is that she is a debuffer. For her passive skill, she has something called Ice Sphere, which creates an ice sphere floating around her body when inflicting enemies with Ice Shackle effect. Proportional to the effect stage, the Ice Sphere will automatically fly towards the nearby enemies and deal damage to the target and its surroundings. Her first active skill here is Frost Shards, which fire an exploding ice beam inflicting damage and icicle around the area it hits. Her next ability here is called Frost Road, which increases her running speed and shield, as well as creates ice sheets on the ground where she stands. When enemies come into contact with these ice sheets, they are inflicted with Shackle. Her second to last ability here is called Cold Snap, where she releases an arc of cold air in front of her, where that inflicts damage and again inflicts that Ice Shackle debuff. Her last ability here is where she creates a Blizzard, which is a snowstorm that explodes over time, inflicting damage and Ice Shackle on enemies caught within. Again, this is one of the first characters that you do get when you play the game, or at least what happened in beta. As she is a free character, she's not as strong as many probably would hope. She's a decent character overall, and she's fun to play if you are a DPS character, or wanting to play a class with at least somewhat of an AoE ability. In that first beta I played, she did feel a little bit underpowered, but overall she's not too bad. Probably the character that I'm going to play at the very start, other than some of the characters that are offered for free, unless there's someone different or if it's the same as the first three. Now this next character is the one that I had the most play with, which is Freyna. She is a part of Albion's secret kernel forces. She used codenames and eliminated without hesitation. During a mission, her team transformed into Vulgus in Room 0, forcing her to eliminate them, including her partner O'Neil. Traumatized and quarantined due to her toxic arch, Freyna resolved to live on, fulfilling O'Neil's final request. She's ranked among the most lethal toxins, needing specialized neutralizers. A brave bioengineer developed one, allowing Freyna to control her arch safely with a suit equipped with neutralizing filters. She only discovered the sacrifice behind it after the suit was completed. This again is a pretty nice damage class. She is a dot dealer for her role. Her passive skill here is increases toxic skill power by the number of nearby enemies inflicted with poison from Freyna's skill. Her first active skill here is a toxic trauma, which throws poison to attack target enemies with damage and inflict Room 0 trauma onto nearby enemies, which again, Room 0 is that debuff. Her second skill here is Defense Mechanism, which significantly increases her defense, and there is also a chance of inflicting Room 0 to enemies upon attacking her. Her second to last ability here is Decomposed Poison, which throws toxic in a form of a toxic swamp. Enemies that do touch this toxic swamp do receive continuous damage and become inflicted with poison and venom soaked. Enemies inflicted with venom soaked leave toxic footprints as they move, and enemies that touch those toxic footprints also become inflicted with poison. So it's essentially a domino effect there. Her last ability here is Venomous Baptism, which changes her current firearm to Venom Baptism. Enemies hit with this are also inflicted with Room Zero trauma. So again, she's constantly inflicting and spreading this Room Zero trauma debuff. This makes her really good for dot damage and AoE farming, as well as even single target damage. I noticed from the beta that she seemingly was one of the higher damage dealers for single target damage as well as AoE, only really outclassed by Gley, who back then had sort of a broken mechanic, which has now been entirely reworked. Freyna is really strong. I'm probably going to main her again, or at least she will be in my repertoire. I enjoyed her overall. It seems like she got quite a few buffs from the beta that I played. She is firearm heavy. She's not going to be using her skills too much. They're very fast to use, so she's constantly switching back to her firearm, again to spread that dot damage. And you do mostly want to keep distance with her, so she isn't very melee heavy in that department, something that I like for that range. Next up we do have Lepic. He is again another starter class, or at least is how it was in beta, with those 3 choices there, so he is one of those 3 choices. His backstory is of the dauntless 44th Grenadier Squad. He lost all but his right arm in the final battle, becoming a legendary soldier. The Magisters, intrigued by his resilience, offered him an Arch Drive tactical prosthetic arm, speculating he might be a latent descendant. The successful transplant awakened his dormant arch, making him an official descendant. Now he's equipped to avenge his fallen comrades and return to the front lines. His tactical prosthetic arm compensates for the descendant's lost limbs. They're directly linked to his brain signal transmissions, and they're integrated with their arch, allowing for various abilities. His arm is specifically designed to infuse explosive arch into ammunition and grenades, which can be shot and concentrated with focused mental control. His role overall is that he is a DPS, just a flat out role there. His passive skill here is there is a chance of surviving fatal damage during battle. His first active skill here is a grenade that throws a grenade forward at an enemy, pretty self-explanatory. Overclock is his next ability, which increases all skill attack and adds burn effect to grenades and overkill for a set duration. He has another traction grenade that will pull enemies within range. And his last ability here is Overkill, which fires a powerful shell at the enemy. The shell is maintained at a landing point for a set period of time, inflicting constant damage. So he does have 1 dot ability there. Again, overall, this is a very baseline soldier character. He has one of the first 3 picks if it's the same as the 2023 beta. So if you're just looking for a baseline character that does some AoE damage, so if you're looking for something that's just default and very easy to play, this is definitely for you. Next up, we do have Jayber. He was born in an infectious disease ward, and he grew up connected to life support device that became his world. Speculations about his genius in electronic warfare range from childhood illness to experimental drugs by the Magisters. Uninterested in his origins, Jayber saw himself simply as a weapon for war, disconnected from his personal dreams. As a descendant, he viewed himself as a necessary unit, indifferent to his teammates' opinions to him. Geniuses are neither born nor made, they are just units in the grand scheme of war. His system enhances his electronic warfare ability by collecting and relaying signals directly to his brainwaves, achieving near instantaneous response times. He specializes in turrets that amplify his arch signals, giving him crucial advantage in combat against large groups of Vulgus. His role is that he is a utility dealer, or a utility type of DPS. His first passive skill here is Turret Sync, which his attack increases when assault turret and medical turrets are both summoned. And for his first ability, he has an assault turret. If it's enhanced, it will launch attacks into nearby areas. Next up, obviously coinciding with his passive skill, he does have that medical turret. This will heal allies and distract enemies. And if it's enhanced, then it will restore mana as well. He also has a multi-purpose gun, which if hit by the multi-purpose gun, his turrets will enter the enhanced state. So that is how you enter both of those turrets into that state there. He also, last up here, has something called Reactivate, which will recall all summoned turrets and inflict powerful damage to nearby enemies. After using Total Recall, you'll enter in the Overhaul state, where then turrets are summoned into their enhanced states as well. So 2 different options in order to get those into those enhanced states. Again, this character does have a lot of stuff that kind of gives you a passive play by being able to deal damage without much input there, although he does have some neat mechanics with the enhanced state that you will need to play into. Next up, we do have Sharen. She is in the Colonel Special Forces. Known for her unmatched combat skills among non-descendants, she faced off against cyborg Vulgus units. Despite her reputation, a mission to eliminate them ended in severe injuries. She was saved by another agent. She underwent a groundbreaking arch drive prosthetic transplant driven by her determination for vengeance. This did spark some controversy for its use on severely wounded individuals. However, she was undeterred and pushed for advanced weaponry and upgrades. Her role is considered a close-range dealer, which is also labeled as an assassin-type melee dealer. Her first passive skill increases her damage when attacking enemies that is not attacking her. Also, downing enemies with a skill in ambush state resets cooldown for active camouflage. Her first active skill is a cutoff beam, which attacks an enemy with an electric blade to deal damage and inflict them with electrocute effect. And as earlier said with her passive skill, she does have active camouflage. She can obviously hide from enemies, making herself completely invisible. However, when attacking or using skills like most camouflage, it does end immediately, and that is regardless of her time remaining. When that ability or camouflage does end, she enters ambush mode, which increases the damage of her next attack. Her second to last active skill here is Impact Rounds, which launches built-in explosives forward from her arm to stun enemies. Her last ability here is something called Flash Short Sword, which will target enemies within aiming range. She'll throw multiple knives to attack them. Those knives will then explode to inflict with damage and electrocute effect. So she does have some debuffing there as well as some assassin type of abilities. So this character is very melee heavy and melee suited. Moving on though, we do have Blair. He is a renowned chef who prepared the Last Supper, a lavish meal that was served before missions. His dream was to cook for soldiers in joy, not duty, by unlocking a century-old vault of ingredients. But when a Colossus attacked, incinerating the vault, Blair seemingly perished in its flame. Miraculously, he emerged as a Descendant, wielding fire from his hands. Now Blair chose to fight as a Descendant to eradicate the Vulgus, believing it would make the Last Supper unnecessary. His high-temperature arch gases through his specifically made gloves, allowing him to unleash precise fire attacks on enemies. It's particularly effective against heat-proofed Vulgus due to its unique property. His role is another dot dealer class. His passive skill is critical hit damage increases when attacking enemies in burn state, which also causes his critical hit chance to increase depending on the number of stoves in the battlefield, which is essentially his AoE ability, which his first one here is called Blaze Up. It spurts flame to deal damage to nearby enemies and create stoves. Stoves will then inflict constant damage and burn effect to nearby enemies. His next ability here is Extinguish, which he can retrieve those stoves in the battlefield and restore his mana. When he retrieves those stoves, it increases his defense for a short period of time. Second to last up here, he has something called Burn Taste. It will spurt flames forward. Enemies near these flames' arrival point are inflicted with constant damage and burn effect. Last up here for his abilities, he does have Deadly Cuisine. He throws a large fireball forward. This large fireball splits into small fireballs, causing extra explosions, and the explosion damage inflicts burn effect and creates stoves on the ground. Obviously, the stones deal the constant damage to nearby enemies and won't inflict with the burn effect. So again, this is another dot dealer where he will constantly domino affect his dots. He is somewhat close ranged. Some of his abilities do require him to be somewhat close up. So if you're into fire or like the closer combat, this one is definitely for you. Next up, we do have Gley. She is a captain of the medical corps who lived by the until the very end. Despite objections, her friend Dia joined the military of Ajax's recommendation. Tragedy struck during that mission and both were captured, experimented on by the Order of Truth. Gley, driven by the medical corps ethos, resolved to find Dia and refused to lose hope. Gley's weapon was a challenge due to her ability to switch between human and magister genetic structures. After debate, it was calibrated to activate during her frenzied state. When she received it, Gley silently inspected the weapon, holstered it, and left. Her role is a utility dealer. Her passive ability creates life spheres upon downing enemies, and she recovers the HP and stores power of life when absorbing that life sphere. Her first active ability consumes HP to enter Berserk mode. In Berserk mode, long distance weapons attacks and penetration will increase. Her next ability is Life Siphon. She'll deal damage to nearby enemies and restore her own HP. However, when she's in Berserk mode, her damage will increase. In her normal state, damage inflicted by enemies will decrease for a period of time. Second to last here, she has Increased Sensory. Her Increased Sensory adds an infinite ammo effect for a certain time. This will only happen during Frenzy. During a non-Frenzy state, she'll increase her movement and HP recovery, during which Life Sphere generation is increased. Her last ability is called Massacre. She changes her current firearm to Massacre and adds additional skill damage. During, again, that Frenzied state, she will inflict a stun effect on hit. This character was super broken during the 2023 beta. However, from my current knowledge and some of the playtests and the technical test, she has kind of been gutted and nerfed and changed a little bit, so more than likely we won't get that back of her overpowered state, as she was the highest damage dealer in the beta. even though she was meant to be a utility character and not necessarily DPS. She does have a pretty cool and unique playstyle though with her frenzied and berserk states, so she might still be really fun to play and decently overall. Next up we have Kyle. He is a captain of the Construction Corps, which led the installation of the crucial outpost in Ingress and the Spectral in the Agna Desert, which was the key to Albion's strength. Tragedy struck when Legion of Darkness forces ambushed his team, leaving his comrades perished. Discovering his arch abilities too late to save them, Kyle vowed to become a Descendant to reclaim the Spectral and recover his fallen teammates' remains, and to honor their memory. Now his suit is tailored for his arch ability. Its magnetic force sparked conflict with the Magisters who doubted his body could handle it. After a heated dispute, Kyle built the suit himself using materials from the Magisters, achieving exactly what he wanted. He is one of the newer characters. His role is a Bruiser, which is a damage-dealing tank who generates and manipulates magnetic fields. His passive skill is Experienced Technician, which acquires magnetic force through skills. When his shield is completely depleted, he recovers shield and magnetic force over a certain period of time. His first active skill here is Repulsion Dash. He dashes towards enemies, dealing damage and recovering his magic force. His second active skill is Magnetic Bulwark, where he creates a frontal barrier to protect against enemies. He recovers that magnetic force depending on the type of projectile blocked. Second to last here, he has Magnetism Spurt. When he is damaged, magnetic force is reduced instead of HP or shields. After a certain period of time, magnetic force detonates to deal the damage around him. Last up here, he has Superconductivity Thrusters, which allow him to fly and when landing deal damage in an area around his landing zone, consuming all accumulated magnetic force. The damage dealt is proportional to the amount of magnetic force that he has consumed. So again, this is a very mobile tank overall. However, seemingly he is more of a solo tank here and less utilitarian to the team overall, but he does have ample protection for himself. Moving on to some of the brand new characters. Here with the first one, Eseimo. He has an explosive arch, which left for Descendant training after his parents reported his ability. Despite the childhood bullying, he embraced his destiny, promising to excel as a Descendant and spread love, even to his former bullies. He used his explosive power to achieve fame and love. His suit not only protects him, but it also collects and stores his explosive arch particles, which are capable of causing large-scale blasts. It neutralizes hazardous material from the explosions, thus shielding him from harm while allowing him to utilize his explosive abilities effectively. His role is a burst DPS. His passive skill is Advantageous Habit, which drops a bomb on the ground when the shield is completely depleted. His first active skill here is called Time Bomb, which launches a sticky bomb forward. The sticky bomb then attaches to an enemy or terrain feature on contact. His second ability here is Blast, which instantly detonates attached bombs and bomb damage increases with the number of attached bombs. His third ability is a Guided Landmine. It will be placed at the current location. Once it's placed, the guided landmine will fly to an enemy within its detected range and attach to it. Last up here, he does have something called Arch Explosion. It will start moving forward fast, and on collision with an enemy will deal damage. This is while charging, and it also inflicts a knockback. When the movement ends, it will deal damage to nearby enemies, but it will also remove the buff that is on them. After that skill ends, he'll enter Madness State. This character does seem kind of like Jayber a little bit, but probably a little bit extra overpowered, or at least a little bit stronger than Jayber, as he is one of the new characters, and he does have some cooler and far-reaching abilities, as well as a new state. Next up, we do have Enzo. He was haunted by the loss of his cousins and comrades due to a critical supply failure. He now focuses on a flawless logic to ensure timely support from frontline operations, which aims to prevent such losses in the future battle. He can summon inorganic matter within his archer's range, but faces limits. No organic matter and arch depletion restricts summoning higher level weapons, yet he can provide unlimited rounds for tactical squads and support drones from his personal armory. His role is support. His first passive skill is Shoot Support, which grants fire support to allies within an area around him, increasing their maximum capacity. The efficiency of this effect increases marginally with the number of him in the squad, and it also increases the efficiency when he disarms the security of the encrypted vault, which in turn will make rewards increase when this happens, so a fairly strong ability if you are a loot farmer. His first ability here is Start Supply. He summons a bullet supplying device at the designated location, where he can supply bullets to allies that approach the device. The bullet supplying device can be used one by each ally, and will disappear when everybody has used it or its duration ends, so akin to the resupply in Helldivers. His second ability here is Explosive Drone. It will launch an explosive drone forward. It will explode on contact with an enemy or terrain object, dealing damage. Second to last here, he has Enhanced Combat Suit, which will summon a shield recovery comm. When the shield recovery comp is first summoned, it will recover his energy shield by a certain amount, and then continue to recover the energy shield through that effect. Last ability here is Perfect Support, where he summons a small supply ship to himself and allies, which will periodically provide supply bullets and grant perfect supplies to allies. It can attack enemies in the front while it is active, and when the skill ends, it will fire missiles forward that cause a big explosion at its destination. This is a very support heavy character that basically doesn't have a ton of damage dealing abilities. In fact, only 2 of them actually deal damage. However, this is an insanely useful team player. Last up here we have Yujin. Reluctantly, he enlists as a medic by his mother. Regretted his reluctance after she and their unit didn't make it. Honoring her wish to never give up on the patients, he saved his commander, Gley, despite his injuries, unleashing his talent healing abilities in process. His arch had a unique healing ability that only benefited others and not himself. Despite this limitation, he joked that it was fitting since he was a doctor, and he requested a healing device to minimize being bothered by his own health issues, emphasizing his preference for focusing on others. Again, his role here is support, which is basically a healer. His passive skill is Stop Overreacting. He will significantly reduce the time to rescue allies, and targets that are rescued by him increase max HP for a certain period of time. His first ability here is Solidarity Healing. He summons a recovery drone that attaches to allies and heals them, which also increases their attack through an accelerant effect upon dismissal. His second ability is Restructured Serum. He does fire that forward, decreasing defense and inflicting allergy. When attacking enemies with allergy, he will heal nearby allies and grant additional healing to allies who are then down by the enemy. His second to last ability is Stimulant Spray. He can grant that to allies. While that is active, incoming damage is reduced, and the recovery is received when stimulation ends. His last ability here is Hyperactive Healing Ground, which heals self, allies, and it grants purification immunity to remove and prevent debuffs. Additional recovery is based on the number of allies and enemies within range. He himself is also granted Hyperactivity effect, which will increase his attack and skill power. Again, more than likely this will be the strongest healer in the game, and a very good support class. That should cover all 14 characters. I might do another deep dive on the ultimates for the 5 characters that we have it for so far. However, that should help you with your decision on what characters to play and why. If you enjoyed today's video, like and subscribe. Until the next doses.